This is the Convene Podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Convene Talk. My name is Maggie, Digital Media Editor. Barbara, tell us what inspired you for today's topic and why you picked it.
Hi, this is Barbara Palmer. I'm Deputy Editor. The story from News Junkie was actually a blog post from TED. When you look at what the story is about, they're really announcing a change to their tagline. They have a 3-word tagline and they're changing it to another 3-word tagline, and they're only changing 2 of the words. So the only reason I think that this is so interesting is because it's TED. TED is 40 years old, which is kind of shocking. And their influence on the world of events, I think, has just been immense. I think everyone knows TED Talks. I think that, people always invited people from outside the industry to come and talk at their events, but I think they just had a level of curation of like finding the best of the best and bringing them in and then creating, a way for their ideas to be delivered really efficiently. And 20 years ago, they started putting their talks online. And what was fascinating to me, I looked at some other material around this, is that they said that they really didn't have a business plan for that. They just thought that these ideas belonged out there. And their tagline at that time was ideas worth spreading. And they did spread. They spread like crazy. And they pioneered so many things, like putting their transcripts online. They also franchised TEDx. I wrote a story about a TEDx in Sing Sing prison, which was amazing. And so ideas really spread. But now, there's ideas everywhere. And they talk about this like it's just like, we are drowning in content. And the new tagline is ideas change everything. One thing I find so fascinating about this, because I think the very concept of ideas is kind of almost under attack by AI, is like, what is the value of an idea? And when they talk about how they're changing, they are adding debates. They are talking about how their audience doesn't just want to hear ideas, they want to put them into practice. And so I feel like that really is an answer to the question about what is the value of an idea. And the value of an idea is what impact does it have on the world? And so I think once again, like they're doubling down on content, they're doubling down on the quality of the content. And I just think that, they've been such innovators and pioneers that I'm just really happy to see this extension of human debate and putting things into practice. And I want to hear what you guys think.
Thanks, Barbara. This is Gale, Managing Editor. Barbara, you shared sort of as a companion piece to the announcement that they were changing their slogan, a video discussion between TED's Chris Anderson and Monique Ruff-Bell. And they just sort of dove deeper into why they made this decision. And I thought it was interesting. They mentioned that they kind of felt like a change was needed because of this doom scrolling era of TikTok and Instagram Reels and different formats like that people get very easily sucked into, but aren't necessarily the most valuable information. Of course, there's some value on those platforms, but there's also a lot of misinformation and a lot of just kind of topics in the algorithm that just sort of give us an echo chamber of what we already know instead of giving us new ideas. And so I thought that was really interesting and really important, because that is true that people can hear these kind of short talks so much easier now. It's so much more accessible, but it's not necessarily correct or educational. And so I love that they're distinguishing their content in that way, that you're hearing from experts and you're getting really great education from what they have to spread.
Yeah.
Curt,
Keith,
what about you?
This is Curt. I'm the digital editor. I like the idea that they're going to start debates for a couple of reasons, because I feel like this is a time in the world where nobody knows how to have a conversation. They only know how to argue and yell at each other, and not have necessarily a productive debate or conversation. So I like the idea that maybe the TED Talks will teach people how to do that again, and to calm down, including, journalists on air broadcasters and stuff like that, who I find sometimes are very aggressive, I think. Also, that interview or that discussion video that you were talking about, Casey, they talked about how these these ideas are raw until they're polished, and that debate is a good way to work on them, refine them, and maybe come up with a new part of them, and or a new tact or something like that, and to really polish them and make them better. And so these have a way to do that, and I think that really parallels meetings, because meetings are a place where ideas are made. Sometimes somebody comes with I don't know what they think is the cure for something or whatever at a medical thing. And maybe somebody else might say, oh, what if you did this? And then they do actually have, a cure or an idea, a business idea or something like that. So I love that whole idea that they will have those kind of shared stages, I guess, where people are able to come up with things. Michelle, what think you?
Thanks, Curt. This is Michelle, editor-in-chief. I'm really interested in those debates because, well, first of all, I'm going to say that on a Jeopardy show recently, I felt very smart because I had the answer. One of the questions or the answers was TED stands for technology, education, and what is the D stand for, which I knew was design. So anyway, I felt really smart, and that was one of the only Jeopardy questions I was able to answer that in that episode. But I think will be really interesting are those debates, because that really does differ from their usual format, which is, the TED Talk. And I think what we learned from the last issue when I spoke to a TEDx coach and a speaking coach, and also Monique Ruff-Bell at TED, about the whole idea of what is a TED Talk. There's so much that goes into putting that together. It seems like it's just sort of like this nice conversation that's like off the cuff, but it takes them months and months to distill down to their main message. So I'm wondering how they prepare for a debate, which is supposed to be more in the moment and more, back and forth. It's organic. That it seems to be a huge shift going away from their formula, which some people have actually criticized, that the TED Talk is too formulaic and it, like you're supposed to pull at the heartstrings and all of those things. But I do think when we talk about the influence it's had on events, I do think people talk about having TED Talk formats, and it has helped in terms of really, as we all do, what we all do in our work every day is really edit stuff down, which is like the most difficult task for me. Is you have all this great stuff, and how do you keep whittling it back so that you get the most compelling and succinct message. So I'm just curious to see what those debates are going to look like. Maggie, do you have any thoughts?
Oh, yeah. And I was just about to jump in and say, actually, the E stands for entertainment, not education.
Entertainment. Sorry. Yeah, I needed to be corrected. At first, I thought theater, education, and design. But no, it's technology, entertainment, and design.
Yeah, there is actually a fascinating video, which is kind of longish, but I'll link it in the show notes with the founder of TED, who explains the whole backstory of TED. And I feel for our audience, it's just incredible to watch because he really puts no filter into the way he presents this whole story.
Is
It's
that Richard
really,
Saul Werman?
yeah, it's
You know,
really
he
raw.
was a speaker at a PCMA event years ago. He was amazing.
He looks like an amazing human being, and I'm like halfway through the video, but I'll definitely watch until the end because he gives so much like little details that you're like, I really wanted to know all that. So he actually addresses entertainment and why not education in that video. That's why it kind of stood out to me. But in this whole discussion about the change of the slogan, and again, it's so much more powerful than the slogan. What stood out to me was how they're going towards this war of attention that we are currently experiencing. And it's something that is becoming part of our vocabulary, especially as we're in events. You compete with so many other events to get those same people to come to your event, and what's your value proposition for them. And there's where the attention is really the biggest resource an attendee is giving you. So you definitely have to respect it and give them something back. Something else that I kind of had to pick on was when Chris Anderson said that they had the power of letting go. And that's when he explained about TEDx. And he said, yes, we have very strong opinion how you should create a TED event, but giving a kind of a rough formula to somebody and saying, okay, just go with it. Let's see what you're going to create out of it. I felt it was a very interesting idea, especially in the world of events where event planners struggle with letting go. It's hard. You know how an event operates. You've created this perfect recipe that works for you, but it's important to let go of your own kind of narrative that you've put in your head, how the event should go, and maybe give this voice to maybe even just a person from a different generation, hear them out. And he addresses that with one of their upcoming new events, which is TED Next, how they're trying to engage the future generation. And it's much more than, yes, we hear you, we see what you do, but they're actually trying to learn from these new content creators and the way the new generation sees the world, which I thought was amazing. It really stands for their value. You can really see the empathy in what they're doing towards the others. And at the end of the day, they really try to serve their audience and they are trying to really understand it. It's not like this is our audience. It's been set for many years, especially now that they're celebrating 40. And they try to dig deeper. Even they're not like, how do you call it? They're not staying in their laurels. What was the saying?
Resting on
They're
their
not
laurels.
resting on their laurels.
Yes, thank you. But yeah, they're trying to keep on innovating, changing with times. So that was truly fascinating for me.
Well, I was also really struck by their grant program. And I don't know if they call it that, but they give, and I do believe it's $1 million
Yeah.
to successful, just ideas. And so it's like this model of this platform for refining ideas, this way of like really reaching throughout the whole world to get collaborators and then to equip them with the means to carry out their plan. So I thought that was pretty cool. I think what's interesting too is how they've always innovated in the in person as well. Like they were in my experience, they were one of the first to really take people out of the convention center or the venues where the meetings were and go have meetings on the beach or, take them, I don't, block off the street and have a street party. Like when they started doing that, it wasn't as common as it is now, or as frequently done. And so I think it's going to be very interesting to see not just what happens online, but it'll be very interesting to see how they innovate around the in-person, whether it'll be people watching the debate on stage or whether they'll then have debates that aren't on stage. So as Michelle said, the whole process of how they do it, I think, is going to be very interesting to watch and to learn from.
Yeah, for sure. That has always been a platform that we've looked up to as event planners because they just bring something special that the audience connects with. And we'll definitely keep an eye out and write stories to inform our audience how they're doing it. And I want to thank you all for this short but sweet discussion. And for those that are listening, as usual, you can find the articles and videos we refer to in the show notes. And don't forget, you can support us by subscribing, liking, doing all the stuff, and follow the podcast. And until next time.